I've begun working on the base for the Orrery. This is what a finished one looks like. It'll have legs on it and such. There are holes that have been drilled halfway down, and there'll be legs in the four corners. And then there's some drilled and tapped holes here because a gearbox is going to be mounted underneath so that the crank that's going to make everything work runs through the gearbox and then up through the main shaft. I made this using Corian. Corian is most often used for kitchen countertops or workbench tops and so forth. It's a great product. It's acrylic embedded with mineral dust, which gives it weight. It's rather hefty, and it gives it strength, and it gives it its color. It's very easy to machine with carbide tooling. And then what I did is I bought a piece of aluminum. It's 40 thousandths of an inch thick, but it's anodized with a nice matte finish black on it. And with my diamond engraver later, I'll be able to, cut through the anodization, revealing the silver aluminum color underneath. So, be able to put the century markings around here and other engravings. And all I did was I took the, I took an 8-inch square piece of the Corian, and I used Formica adhesive, which is essentially strong contact cement, and adhered the anodized aluminum right to the Corian. And when you apply pressure and let it dry overnight, it's not going anywhere. And then I drilled some mounting holes for putting it on the mill. When you're milling that, or when I'm milling it, I mill it aluminum side down because most of the additional work has to be done on the back. The only thing you need to be aware of is Corian can be cut at fairly high feeds and speeds, but when you get down to the aluminum, you're cutting aluminum, which can't be cut as fast. So I set my G-code up so that when it got down to that level, things slowed down for making the final pass, and then I came back and did a cleanup pass. The other advantage of using an aluminum on top of the Corian is it gives you a really nice sight line along here. That should look pretty good when it's all set up. Anyway, mounting it on the mill was tricky because it's an 8x8 square, and my mill, even though I've enhanced it from its original shoreline size, 8 inches is the absolute maximum you can go. So I had to do a lot of futzing around to make sure that I had gotten this positioned in such a way that I can reach both ends here. There's no problem in X, there's plenty of room there, but in Y it's an issue. I actually had to remove the bellows from back here just to give me that extra inch or so. I also added some step blocks here to hold the waste piece so that when I cut through it's not loose. But I'll just start this up again and you'll see the difference with constant velocity coming on. No more herky-jerky. You may have also noticed how the bit entered the part. My CAM software, which is a Libre, lets me specify a tangential approach into the work. And what that does, instead of plunging straight down, is you never have a point in your work where you see where the bit came in. It gives you a much smoother, in fact you can't even tell where the bit entered the piece because it's just coming in on a tangent and joining up with the curve in the piece. But anyway, this is boring stuff. It'll take a while to get down to the aluminum layer. I've now reached the level where the next plunge of the end mill is going to be cutting through the aluminum. So I've set up my G-code in such a way that that cut will be running at a much lower feed rate. And I'm also going to turn on my misting attachment here so that we're cooling the bit and there's lubrication. So I'll get that started for a minute. It'll make some noise. But it does make a big difference. Okay, now I've removed the waste piece because we're ready to run the finishing pass. That'll be run climb milling, so the bit will go in the opposite direction. Again, I'm going to use the mist, and I found when I made the first one that running the finishing pass a second time, not changing any parameters, just running it a second time, gave me a really beautiful finish, which you probably saw when I showed you the other one I made. I mean, there's been no sanding or anything on that. That's just the finish that's coming off the mill. Alright, so that's the first run of the finish pass. I'm going to run it one more time because it helps on this particular thing because we're cutting multiple material types, I think. Alright, I've machined out the pockets for the leg holes. But what I'm going to do now is run my boring head through here so that they're all identical. That'll make it much easier later when I turn the legs. You know, I'll have a fixed dimension to work with on all the holes. So this is just a standard boring operation, both literally and figuratively. And now I'll just repeat that process for each of the 4 legs.